can I track Joey down and ask Joey what his experience was? That, to me, is an important thing.
What about someone who's new in the industry? How can they get their name out there to get started with editing? And what credentials should they have?
Well, I would try to get a referral from an industry professional.
Okay.
Because a lot of times the agents or the in-house editors at a publishing company will say, yes, this person is young and new, but they did a great job for us on such and such a book, and look how well it's done.
Okay.
That, I guess, talk to an industry professional under any circumstances if you can get some kind of a referral that way. If you already have an agent, agents are pretty opinionated about these things, so that sometimes is helpful. Check out the website, as I've said, and then go ahead and correspond and see what kind of response you're getting there. You know, is it prompt or is it prompt enough? You know, you have to remind yourself that people like me, it's just me. I don't have a secretary. You know, I don't have somebody who's answering my correspondence for me, so if I'm in the middle of a hot deadline, it may be a few days before I get back to you. And then the other thing I would tell people about working with professional editors is that they should be prepared to wait, because anybody who's self-employed needs to keep work in the pipeline.
So when should someone begin to look for an editor? Should they start when they're at the very beginning, or when they have an idea, just to make sure they have the right person, or should they be officially done with their book? When should they look for an editor?
Well, hopefully you're not planning to send a first pass or a first draft. So you've worked on your first draft. Now you've still got some time, because you're going to have to go through and do all your self-editing and rereading and all of the things that you're going to do as a writer, and probably go through several passes before you want to really show it to anybody. But that would be a good time to get out and start looking for an editor, talking to an editor, because then at least you know what your word count is. I base my fees on word count. So if you send me an email and say, I'm just about to finish my manuscript, I think, well, you're just about to finish your first draft. Okay. At least got the first draft, so I can tell you how much it might cost you. And then that way, while you go through your second draft and your third draft and your seventh draft, you can be doing all of those things while you're waiting for the whole that I'll have 2 or 3 months down the road.
So in talking about fees, what is the financial commitment that an author should be expected to pay for an editor, either just one editor, a copy editor, or the other editors you spoke of earlier?
The developmental editor. Well, it depends on word count.
Okay.
But let's say that you've written a manuscript. Your manuscript is between 70 and 80,000 words. That's probably, for a developmental edit, going to cost you anywhere between $2,000 and $3,000.
Okay.
And I can hear the gasps all over America as I say that, but you should just be forewarned that if somebody tells you they'll do it for $500, then you're not really you get what you pay for.
Right. You're going to get either $500 worth, or you're going to get the $2,000 worth, and that's what you're going to get.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the fact of the matter is that it's a very time-consuming process. I mean, I read a manuscript twice before I ever start making notes.
Oh, wow.
And then I write notes, and I have been known to spend a week or more just writing the note, the editorial note. And then after I've done that, I scroll back through the manuscript again and look at it one more time. You know, I don't necessarily read the whole thing, but I just kind of go back through. And while I'm in that third read, when I'm writing the note, I'm keeping track of the timeline, and all the characters and all of those things take time, you know. So I have a separate set of notes for myself that's basically a Bible of the book. So anyway, it is not an inexpensive process, but it's not something that happens fast.
Right. So can you explain the difference between working with an editor when you're self-published versus going through a publishing house?
If you're working with a publishing house, the in-house editor will have reviewed your manuscript and decided, oh, so-and-so would be perfect for this, and has probably already gotten in touch with that editor to give them a heads up and say, I've got a manuscript coming that I think you'd be perfect. So in terms of that, the publishing house does all the work, and the publishing house pays for it as well. And that, for some writers, that's a huge relief, that the publishing house will pay for it. If you are going to self-publish, all of the risks are yours, but then all of the profits are yours as well. So you will be paying for it, but you may well be charging a little less, and when a book sells, you get all the profit.
So what are some misconceptions that people have about editing?
The biggest one I've encountered over and over again is that writers assume that our relationship is going to be adversarial, and that is the opposite of what I want. There is absolutely no joy on a battlefield, and if we're fighting, then that's really, it's just not a good situation. It's certainly not a good situation for me. I do this job because I love it and because I have fun with it. And so I prefer to have a good laugh and keep moving forward. I try to let them know that we are a team. I'm on your team. Another misconception for some authors is that I am somehow their editorial assistant or, their assistant, period, and that they can send me, a really sloppy manuscript and I'm going to clean it all up. And that's not the case either. I'm not going to do your rewrite. You're going to do your rewrite. I go into it with the idea that this is a collaboration of equals and that I have things to bring to the table. The author has things to bring to the table. And that's how we're going to work it out. And along the way, we're probably going to become friends.
Yeah, that sounds really good because when you hear those stories about my last editor did this and that, that's not how it should be. It should be a partnership because you're working together, and it shouldn't be about, her style is different than mine, and it shouldn't be that way. It should just be a partnership.
Exactly. Now, you do get people who resist, who have made some assumptions ahead of time. And interestingly, as an editor, I can see you, and I understand that you're resisting me. And one of my favorite stories is a gentleman I worked with years ago who, after the first pass, sent me back a manuscript and had changed every single thing that I had changed back his way.
Oh, wow.
And I just kind of kept saying, I really think if you try this, so I'd switch it back. And at the end of the process, he wrote me the most lovely email that said, I really appreciate the fact that you kept coming back to me because it is a better book. And I want to work with you from now on. And we do. So, it made me cry, frankly, because it was so nice. But the thing was I was just resisting him. I wasn't having a fight with him. I just kept coming back with the same suggestion over and over and over again until he realized that I just wasn't going to give it up. Now, there's times when I do. There's times when I just say, okay. I have written a blog post about it that I send to authors before we begin working together and to tell them what to expect. So I try to let them know ahead of time, you are probably going to be surprised and you're probably going to be a little bit dismayed. And that's okay. I totally get it. That this is your baby. You sent it to me or your publisher sent it to me, and now I've come back around and criticized your baby. But that's my job. That's what I'm being paid for. No matter who's writing that check for me, someone is paying me to be a critic, to be an extreme critic,
Mm-hmm.
And my job in that is to make you glad you got it. So I tell people, look at those notes with an open mind and an open heart. Try not to be defensive, because whatever. I mean, I expect pushback, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a difference between getting defensive and just pushing back and saying, well, I did that because of blah, blah, blah. I'm all about the blah, blah, blah. If you have a good reason for it, I'm down with it. So I tell people, read those notes, then walk away from it and just think about it and take as long as you need. Don't start writing me a rebuttal right away. If I get a rebuttal within 24 hours, then I start to worry, And if I start seeing it vented on social media, then that doesn't speak well for anybody. So maybe talk to your husband or your wife, and
yeah.
just let her rip, but then come back and be businesslike with me, because I try to be businesslike as well. And then I tell people, just give it a try, see what happens. If you don't like it, we can put it back. That's what track changes are all about. So, and ask questions, push back a little bit, and then we'll take it from there. And in 14 years, I've had a couple of projects really go south, but most of the projects I've worked on have turned out okay.
Yeah, well, it sounds like your role is to criticize the book the way the readers would before the readers get to it, so you can correct all of that and fix it.
Right, exactly. Yep, that's my job.
Yeah, so that's good to have some criticism, and that's so that they can go in and make those changes, and no one can judge their book that way.
Well,
because you've caught all of it.
And readers still come back with stuff. I don't go and read the comment at Amazon on books that I've worked on, because it makes me kind of just as sick as it might make the author to get a negative review. But I just can't stress enough that I'm on the team and I love your book and I want it to work. So for me, a book is like a puzzle that I get to solve. So you were asking about misconceptions. Those are the ones. I don't want it to be adversarial at all.
Yeah. So is there anything else as we wrap up that you feel is important for writers to understand about editing, the editing process?
When you read about the great editors of the past, some of the legendary editors, it was always about relationship. Of course, everything in life, as far as I'm concerned, is about relationship. And it's no less so in an editing situation. And it's sort of like your relationship with your hairdresser, That is about relationship too. And your hairdresser sees those roots that you haven't colored in a few weeks, and your editor is probably going to see something that maybe you wondered about and were trying to get by with something, and a lot of times your editor's going to see that. And I do have authors send me a list of questions and say, these are the places that I'm concerned about. I love those lists of questions, and I do not read them until I've read the manuscript, because I don't want to be influenced by what the author is worried about. But then once I've read it, then it's great. We'll talk about your questions, because to me, that's an author who's already invested in the process.
Well, thank you so much for that. Would you mind telling our listeners how they can contact you if you're looking for new books?
Yes. I have a website. It's jamiechavez.com. And there's a place on that website, I'm trying to think, in the menu that says contact. And you can send me a message there.
All right. Well, thank you so much for speaking with us today and for helping us to help all the Christian authors out there. It was really helpful for our listeners. Lastly, thanks to everyone tuning in to ConnectionsHQ.com, the headquarters for connecting Christians.
Today's host was Chelsea Elliott from ChelseaElliott.com.
Be sure to connect with our authors and our hosts under our Connect tab at ConnectionsHQ.com.